Welcome back to Tiny Blue Games. My name's of course Csaw or Chris, and today we're talking about Final Fantasy XIV in 2020. Though more specifically, we are talking about hype, and if you can have too much hype going into certain stories, certain dungeons, certain instances. And this really applies to Final Fantasy XIV, but it does apply to pretty much any game or any MMO, so you might enjoy this even if you're not super invested in Final Fantasy XIV. But if you are, and you probably know why I'm making this video, yesterday I posted a video with my reactions to the Vault. And the Vault is a specific dungeon in Heavensward that a lot of very interesting things happen. And if you're trying to avoid spoilers, I'm going to warn you right now, we're probably going to get into some of those interesting things, so I'd probably, avoid it. And if you haven't seen the video, I'll link it in the top right as a card as well, so you can kind of get on the same page as us. But just to catch people up, I played through the dungeon, I watched the cutscenes afterwards, I shared my reactions that I had live doing it, and the comments in that video are kind of mixed. And a lot of people thought that I didn't react in the way that they wanted me to react, which is kind of crazy because, everyone reacts differently to different news. I think more the point, though, is that I didn't react enough to it, or I didn't grasp how big of a thing it was. And a lot of people are saying that's because people in the comments of past videos had overhyped the situation, and that's really where the main focus of this video is going to be. What is too much hype? Can you overhype something? And is it bad for new players? So there's a lot to unpack in this, and the very first thing that I want to make clear is that if you are someone who overhyped stuff or hyped stuff in a past video, don't feel bad whatsoever. If we determine at the end of this video that I was overhyped for this and that's why it didn't register with me, I'm as much to blame as anyone else. I'm the one reading these comments. I'm the one kind of like reading even the spoilerish material that sometimes gets written. It's on me, okay? And it is, to some regards, a danger of being a content creator. You're just going to expose yourself to this more than the regular player going through the game. That's part of the job. That's part of the hobby. I don't know why I call it my job. It's part of the journey. Let's just say that. And I appreciate it. I appreciate the good and the bad of that, because there is a lot of good of it, because I do explore different parts of the game that I otherwise wouldn't, because you guys recommend it and hype it up. So there is a lot of good to be said about it. But what I do want to look at more specifically is why I reacted the way I did to the ending cutscene, and mostly the death that happens in the cutscene, because it is a sad death. And I do say in the video, like, oh, it's really sad, but I don't react as big as I could have. And the very first point I want to point out is that I was very concerned that I was missing some other big lore bomb that might happen, because I was really prepared for a lore bomb. And I think the biggest thing we learn is that, the knights are able to transform, right? And that's a pretty big part of this, that's even woven into the death. So that's a pretty big takeaway from the dungeon. But after that, I didn't want to miss anything. And that's kind of on myself. I'm very overly concerned that I'm missing lore details, and that you guys are going to have to over-explain it in the comments or something like that. So I'm really trying to pick up on it as best I can. So that's part of it. The other thing, though, is that you have to look at where I'm coming from. So I recently finished A Realm Reborn, which is probably the other cutscene or part of the game that was hyped up almost to this level. And that was the kind of last cutscenes, which lasted between like an hour and 2 hours, so like really, really long. And let's just go over what happened in that cutscene. First off, we had the Sultana, who was killed, in brackets, because we know that's not the case. We were framed for the murder, and we lost most of the Scions. That's a huge amount of information to unpack. Yes, it's a 2 hour or 1 hour cutscene, I forget what it was now, but that's a huge event. So when you compare that to what happened in this, from my perspective, equally hyped moment, it seems a little bit like I'm missing something, right? You can kind of get that. So I guess in that regards, maybe I was overhyped and I was comparing the end of an expansion and the end of A Realm Reborn to a dungeon in the middle end of Heavensward. So that's definitely one of the issues for sure. So I blame myself as much as anyone else. The other big thing is that let's go back to the whole Sultana got killed in brackets. I thought she was dead. She came back to life. And do I know for sure that this person is going to be dead forever, or are they going to be coming back to life? Are we going to, like, you know, collect a bunch of berries from 5 different zones and bring them back to life somehow? Like, I don't know how permanent death is in this game, right? And that comes from a new player perspective. All MMOs, all games treat death differently. You have games like World of Warcraft and Guild Wars 2, where we travel in and out of the realm of the dead. Like, where are we going next in World of Warcraft? Like, death isn't as much a final point in certain games as others. And I don't really have a good feeling for how final it is in Final Fantasy XIV. So that definitely plays into it, because, hey, they might not be dead. Now, based on the reactions I've gotten from the video, the comments, I'm kind of assuming that they're permanently dead, and that's maybe a much bigger reaction. And I think on another level, it's going to take me a little while to process the death, like a regular death would. I know this is a video game and it's not as serious, but, you know, loss is still quite the thing. And if you're kind of taking someone for granted and then all of a sudden they're removed from your life, you start remembering all of the things they did for you. And in the comments, a lot of people have been writing, you know, all of these wonderful things that this player or this character has done for us. And through reading them, I do think that, you know, maybe I forgot some of the good things that happened, because he was in a lot of ways in our corner when no one else was at the end of A Realm Reborn. And as this story has gone through Heavensward, I'm introduced to a lot of different characters, and I start to get really intertwined with all these other stories, and then all of a sudden, this character that was very important at the end of Realm Reborn has kind of been put on the back burner, right? So I'm really focused, you know, on Estinian, Lady Iceheart, and Sir Emmerich, and then all of a sudden, this other character sacrifices themselves for us, and it's kind of shocking, because you're like, wait, what just happened? So it's a lot to unpack, and I think some of that shock kind of removes the actual shock reaction that you might have, because I'm like waiting for something else to happen to him. Like, is he gonna get revived by someone? Is something big gonna happen to save him? And, you know, as time goes on, it becomes more clear, I guess, specifically when we go back and discuss this with his father and we kind of see the loss there, that it is something really sad. And we do see the loss from the father. We see our character in game react. A few people have pointed out that maybe Lalafel's reaction isn't quite as significant as some of the other races. I don't know what to say about that. But certainly we start to feel the mood of the game. And that's when things, like looking back at it, and I did, as soon as I saw the comments coming up for this video, I went back and watched it over again. You can definitely see the turning point where it's, you know, okay, we're supposed to actually be quite sad at this. So I do think I should have picked up maybe more on the fact that this was a final death, like this is the end, and that should have had maybe more of an impact to me as a player. So yeah, I know this video has gotten a bit more rambly than a lot of my other videos do, and I kind of knew that was going to be the case from the very start, because I just set out to kind of do a response style video, and I do want to start doing more of these, because there are a few topics specifically within the Final Fantasy XIV community that I do want to talk more about, so maybe it's something that'll happen more in the future. But in terms of moving forward with the channel, I don't want anyone to feel scared about what they comment. I think, you know, if you're posting spoilers, like actual legitimate spoilers, tagging it as spoilers, and then kind of, you know, having it so you have to expand the comment to see it, that's an appropriate way to do it. If you do need to share that, if you're able to talk about things without spoiling it, that's obviously great too, because obviously we have to be careful for myself, but also for any other new players that do come into the game through my channel, and there are quite a few people that do, just not to ruin any part of the story for them. Now, in terms of hype, yes, it kind of took away maybe from this specific moment, but it's also something that made me really excited for the moments leading up to this, and it really did get me more invested in the story than I was before. For instance, I'd say the end of A Realm Reborn, and I'm kind of comparing these two throughout the whole video here, I was probably a little bit less hyped for that, and I was still invested in the story, but in terms of how invested I am, I'd say Heavensward has me way more wrapped up in it. Like I'm invested in so many characters that I was just looking at how everyone was impacted by this final scene, and kind of, just looking at the fact that, hey, we did rescue Sir Amric, so there was some good that came from it. But yeah, I guess what I'm trying to say is hype is good. You guys should keep doing it. Yes, maybe don't go overboard on certain events and stuff like that, but certainly don't be afraid to mention your favorite quest or your favorite thing to do, because I want to know what those are. I want to go and do the best parts of the game. I don't want people to feel afraid to share something or share their own opinions. And that's what this all comes down to, is opinions at the end. Some people might agree with me and not have quite as big of a reaction. Some people might have a way bigger reaction. That's just, we're all different, and that's how it's going to be. So, okay, I think this has gotten way too high level for what I wanted to do in this video, but that's kind of where I want to leave it. The last thing I want to talk about is that this was a live reaction, and I'm still very inexperienced doing live videos, right? There's probably been a handful of videos that I've done that are live in terms of the actual reaction. I haven't done any live streams. There were a few people who thought this was a live stream that they'd missed. Don't worry, when live streams start, there will be lots of announcements. You'll probably even get to vote on the day of the first live stream, so there'll be a ton. That being said, if you want to make sure you don't miss it, subscribe is the best thing you can do with the little notification bell, but yeah, so that definitely could have played a part in this as well. I think I'm very focused on my gameplay, as well as making sure I'm not talking too much, but also talking sometimes. So there's a lot to juggle that I'm just not used to doing. Whereas if I'm sitting back and knowing that I can react multiple times over, if I can watch it and then afterwards do a voiceover, there's a lot more I can do with that reaction, instead of just taking the information in and being like, oh my god, did I miss anything? Is this what's happening? So that's part of it too. But yeah, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you enjoyed the Vault video. I always like having these kind of one-on-one talks with you and just sort of sharing where I'm coming from. I'm happy so many people wanted to engage in the comments and kind of debate this in the last video. I think the best thing as a content creator is to see your content causing conversation. I think that's the best feeling. Whenever I post a video and I get a lot of likes, that's super exciting, and I always love likes. But when you get kind of more of a controversial video with some likes, some dislikes, and a lot of comments, that's really the sweet spot. That's when you can engage with your community and really start talking to other people and listening to their opinions and why they like this or why they like that. So yeah, that's where I'm coming from. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.